Welcome back to the Illinois Fighting Illini Dynasty. I am your host, Jay Shoob, and we got another great episode for you guys today. It is Season 4 recap. Can't wait to get into this video. We are going to cover the bowl results from the season, show you guys the top 25 polls, and then we will dive into some player and team stats for Illinois this season. So a lot of cool stuff to get into, recapping how Season 4 went. Thank you guys for watching this video, and let's get into it. So a little recap of this season. Of course, we started out beating UCF 51-10, a big surprise, Illinois dominating the Knights there. Then we beat Northern Illinois, and then we go into the Notre Dame game. That was a huge game at Soldier Field. We won that. Samari Collier took over in the second half. The Michigan game was big as well. Dewspan got hurt. Then we play Penn State, Michigan State, Minnesota. Ken Peoples emerges as our quarterback. We beat Iowa, a few thrillers built in there, and then that's when we played the Nebraska game. And the Nebraska game, heartbreaking loss on the road. And then we lost to Purdue at home on senior day. And then we rebound by beating Wisconsin, a thriller against Northwestern. And then, of course, end the season beating Texas A&M in the Rose Bowl to cap off an 11-2 season. So looking at the national championship results, it was UCLA versus Nebraska. Nebraska, the team that beat us earlier in the season, and they won the national championship. That is right, Nebraska fans, your Cornhuskers are the 2024 national champions with head coach Scott Frost in this dynasty. Parker McQuarrie, the quarterback for UCLA, he was one vote away from winning the Heisman. He threw a pick in this game. So did Logan Smothers, the quarterback for Nebraska. But Nebraska really did it with their defense. They were very good all season long, and they had elite defensive play. We saw that in our game against them in Lincoln this year. Ken Peoples really struggled against this Nebraska defense. That Nebraska defense got two different defensive scores in that game. And I'm not surprised to see the Big Ten and Nebraska take home a national championship. And now the other New Year's Six results. Notre Dame beats Miami in the Fiesta Bowl. We, of course, beat Notre Dame this year. Texas Tech and Auburn, the Red Raiders roll over the Tigers. The Big 12 champ versus the SEC champ there. The Orange Bowl, Florida State takes down Oregon. The Peach Bowl, LSU beats Georgia Tech. In that bowl, LSU finishes at number 3. And then in the Cotton Bowl, Minnesota surprisingly got in there as an at-large to one of these New Year's Six bowls, and they beat up on Iowa State. So how about Minnesota finishing number 12 in the country? Kind of a good season for them, which at the time when we played them, they almost beat us, and I was thinking that's a pretty good team. So that certainly ended up being the case. And then looking here at the Big Ten results, I mean, the Big Ten cleaned up in bowl season this year. The Big Ten Conference finishes 8-1. Ohio State and Georgia in the Music City Bowl. Ohio State won that game. Kind of funny. That game features two unranked teams in this world. And then Michigan defeats Texas. Of course, Nebraska won the national championship. So I'd say the Big Ten did very well this year in postseason play. And you could argue it was the best conference this season. And they have the national champion and went 8-1 in bowl season. And then taking a look here at the final top 25 polls, Nebraska number 1, of course, and then there is Illinois. We finish at number 2 in the polls following this season. There's a lot of teams that lost multiple games this season. Nebraska, of course, was the only one that only lost one game. And if you look at our schedule, we have 2 top 10 wins on our resume. We beat Notre Dame, who finishes number 9, and then, of course, we beat A&M in the Rose Bowl. So 2 top 25 wins, and one of our 2 losses was to the eventual national champion, Nebraska. So we played a very tough schedule this season, and I think we did pretty well, all things considered. With all the drama and adversity that Illinois had to go through this year, I am proud of what this team accomplished. So now let's dive into the player stats, the passing numbers this year. All 3 of Illinois' quarterbacks this year got some playing time, even Samari Collier. And it was a little bit of injury roulette this season. Dewspan finishes with the highest passer rating of 150, which is pretty good. And then Ken Peoples and Samari Collier down there with almost identical passer ratings. You can see completion percentage, Span and Peoples both 63%. Not great, but not bad. Samari Collier also did very well in the backup role. And these numbers kind of validate, I think, what we've seen on the season. The touchdown to interception ratios certainly weren't the greatest, especially for Kenton Peoples. He wasn't necessarily the best passer, but he made up for it with his legs. Of course, Deuce Spann on the season a better passer, 6 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions before he got hurt. And I really do believe that if Spann had not gotten hurt, that he would have had a very good season. He would have been maybe not a Heisman finalist, but he would be up there as one of the better players in all of college football. It's just unfortunate that he got hurt and was very rusty in the Rose Bowl. But now let's move on to the rushing stats here. Reggie Love, no surprise, he just gets across that mark of a 1,000-yard rushing season. We continue that streak for our running backs. Kenton Peoples leads the team in rushing touchdowns with 11. This is where Peoples did damage on the ground. And if you count Peoples' rushing touchdowns with his passing touchdowns, he had 15 all-purpose touchdowns to only 4 interceptions. So if you look at it that way, Peoples really makes up for his lack of strong passing with his ground game. Average yards per game, Reggie Love, no surprise up there. Spann and Peoples also nearly identical in the 50s. And you also have to factor in that sacks count as negative rushing stats for quarterbacks. So this is even with those sack yards being counted against the QBs. Broken tackles, Reggie Love with 3 of them on the year. Peoples with 2. But Peoples, man, he's got to work on his ball control. 8 fumbles on the season. That is just something that's got to be cleaned up. Love Kenton Peoples. He's just a freshman. You see he's an 87 overall player. He's just a redshirt freshman. But the turnovers, the fumbles, it's something that he's got to work on going into next year. But he is a star in the making. I think everyone can agree on that. And then as far as receiving goes, Illinois traditionally does not really have a standout wide receiver 1 type of guy, and they pretty much evenly distributed the ball all season long. Patrick Bryant, Reggie Love combined for the lead in receptions. Illinois likes to throw to the running backs a lot. Receiving yards, Patrick Bryant up there. Average yards per reception. Receiving touchdowns, Zach Anderson, believe it or not, ties with Patrick Bryant with 3 receiving touchdowns on the year. Marquardt got 2, and then really not a whole lot of receiving touchdowns this year for Illinois. It was something that it was just down this year. The red zone passing game just wasn't as strong as it has been in years past, but that's likely, that's mainly to do with Kenton Peoples on the ground. He likes to run in the red zone especially, and it is effective for Illinois. Yards after catch, something that I think is very important. Reggie Love, very good job out of the backfield there in the receiving game. Drops was a problem this year. I can recall a few drops, one in particular against Nebraska that was very big in determining pretty much the national championship race this year, you could argue. But Patrick Bryant, he led the team in drops, Reggie Love as well, but those 2 guys also were fed the ball the most, so you can sort of give and take there. But that's something that Illinois has got to work on going into next season. And then how about these blocking stats? I was shocked to see Kevin Tyler, the right guard. What a season. He had 18 pancake blocks. 18. The next guy was Pfeiffer Griffin, who only had 4. What a season for Kevin Tyler. That's outstanding ratios. Only 2 sacks given up. Pfeiffer Griffin, Blaze Sparks, 6 sacks given up each. That's the right tackle and left tackle, respectively. And again, offensive line stats, not really the greatest to judge in this game, but that's what we got. And as far as the defense, I love looking over the defensive stats at the end of every single season. Calvin Hart, the outside linebacker for Illinois, he led the team in total tackles. Loved Calvin Hart this year. He really was a guy that stepped up and really surprised me and ended up being a great player. I thought that Calvin Hart wouldn't necessarily outshine Patrick Coleman, and Patrick Coleman is a guy that started his entire career and has that experience, but Calvin Hart really was the better linebacker this year, and I love using the linebackers in the 4-2-5 system. It's so much fun. So Hart was a great player. Linebackers are so important in this scheme. And then Jerzon Newton, no surprise, he led the team in TFLs. Sedarius McConnell up there as well, and in sacks. Jerzon Newton with 16. What a season for Jerzon Newton. Great senior season. What a way to go out for him. And then Sedarius McConnell, it seems like we always have a guy that is overshadowed by another guy like the Keith Randolphs and the Jerzon Newtons. But Sedarius McConnell was very good quietly from edge rushing the left end there. Sedarius McConnell with 9 sacks, 18 TFLs. That is very good. As far as interceptions, Prince Green led the team with 2 of them. Of course, I don't think anybody's going to match that season from Marquez Beeson last year, where he had, I think, 6 or 7 INTs. But Prince Green, very good senior season. He started all 4 years along with Daniel Edwards. And then pass deflections as well. Prince Green and Daniel Edwards, those 2 guys, the 2 senior corners for Illinois, we are going to miss them. They are the only 2 players that have started every single game this entire Dynasty series to this point. All 4 years, Daniel Edwards and Prince Green, they were thrown into the fire as true freshmen, and then they will end as seniors, leading the team in pass deflections. Daniel Edwards and Prince Green, maybe not the most talented guys, but guys that got a ton of starting experience, and we're going to miss them on this defense. And then as far as defensive touchdowns on the year, Ryan Williams, Illinois got 2 of them. Ryan Williams and Prince Green. Ryan Williams got a scoop and score against Penn State, and then Prince Green with the pick 6 against Wisconsin. Both of those plays are on the highlight video. If you haven't watched that, go check that out. And then let's go into special teams here. Special teams always is something interesting to look at. Reggie Mathis, 20 for 20 on the year. He did not miss a single kick. Reggie Mathis is the best kicker in the entire country. You cannot convince me otherwise, and he is just a sophomore. I am very happy that Illinois has the best kicker in the country, and we're going to have him for 2 more years. He is going to continue this streak going into the next year of not missing a single field goal, and it is such a luxury to have him back there kicking field goals. And as far as the punting, Hugh Robertson, a senior, also another guy that started, has been the punter all 4 years of this dynasty, and 45 average yards per punt, not bad for him on his way out. And then kick return this year. Of course, I expected a drop off in kick return production with Kyron Cumbie leaving, but Cornelius Taylor, I'd say, did a pretty good job. He did get 3 kickoff return touchdowns, which Kyron Cumbie, I believe, was averaging about 4 every single season, so Taylor just had 1 notch below, but he had over 1,000 kick return yards, so I'd say pretty good in sort of filling in some big shoes there. And as far as the punt return, Daniel Edwards, not too great, but not bad. Also, I think that maybe Illinois will look to go in a different direction in punt return next year, but we shall see. And then as far as the national defensive stats, look at this. Illinois was number 1 in the country in total defensive yards given up. You just love to see that. They gave up the fewest amount of points as well on the season. 236 points given up, with Nebraska and Wisconsin, all 3 Big Ten West schools, were up there. Notre Dame in the top 10 as well. So we've played some very good defenses in this dynasty, and that is part of the reason why the offensive numbers are so hard to make look good in this series. So many good defenses in this conference. And then as far as the Big Ten, we'll go over to the offense. And within the realm of the Big Ten, the offense wasn't great. It was pretty average, and that's pretty typical in this dynasty. Illinois really makes a name for themselves defensively, but looking at points per game, Illinois was in the top half. They were 7th, I believe, in total points per game offensively, which, again, is not good, but not bad at all. So we will take that. And then defensively, of course, Illinois was number 1 in the entire country in total points allowed. They are number 1 in the Big Ten in total points allowed, with Nebraska and Wisconsin up there. It is certainly a defensive-oriented conference. The best teams always have good defenses in the Big Ten in this series. And looking at sacks here, Illinois tied with Michigan for the most sacks in the Big Ten with 46. Both of these teams have 2 really good defensive lines. We, of course, played Michigan earlier in the season. That was a great game. So 2 very good defensive lines there. And then as far as conversions, I'm always very interested to see how Illinois favors in here. And look at that. Illinois was number 1 with a 51% third down conversion rate, which is pretty good. That means that Illinois converted a third down more often than they did not. And that's number 1 in the entire Big Ten. So if you are north of 50% on third down conversion rates, that's pretty good. And I think a lot of that has to do with Ken Peoples on the ground. I think in those third down situations, that's where he likes to take off. And that has really bailed Illinois out in a lot of those situations. And as far as fourth down conversion rate, look at Illinois. They're number 2, converting their fourth down 75% of the time. That is really good. And that justifies Illinois going for it on fourth down a lot. And then as far as red zone numbers here, also very interesting to look at the end of every year. Illinois was third in the Big Ten, tied for third, with an 85% offensive red zone scoring rate, which is, again, pretty good. You want to have a high scoring rate in the red zone. You want to be able to finish drives, of course. And then defensive red zone percentage, Illinois is number 2 in the conference. So 1 out of every 4 times an opposing offense got into the red zone against Illinois' defense, they did not score, which is pretty good. So Illinois doing well in terms of conversions, which you love to see that. And then turnovers. Last but not least, turnovers, man. It is nearly impossible to have a positive turnover differential. Illinois at the bottom there with a -7 turnover differential. That is one of the hardest things to do in this game, is to come out positive in turnovers. It is something that I don't know if I will ever be able to accomplish this. I think winning a national championship is easier than maybe having a positive turnover differential, but look at Minnesota, 18, plus 18 in turnovers. That is insane. Why can't Illinois be like that? And then in terms of interceptions, fumbles, Illinois, of course, at the top in fumbles lost with 8 of them. That's something that they got to work on, as I mentioned earlier in this video. And then in terms of takeaways, Minnesota, no surprise, leads with 29 of them. Illinois only with 11. So that's part of the reason why Illinois didn't really have a positive turnover margin, is because they didn't get many takeaways. They're towards the bottom of the conference in takeaways, despite having a fantastic defense this year. So it's something that we want to keep working on as the Dynasty series goes on. And that'll do it for the juice of this episode, folks. We are moving on to the off season. That is going to be the next video on the docket. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it is a video that doesn't necessarily get the most views, but if you watch this video and are interested in the team stats and the player stats and stuff like that, hope you guys enjoyed this content. I know most of you like watching the game videos, but thank you for being here. And the next video will be the off season, of course, and it's going to be a big one. If you're still here sticking around, get ready, because there are some big things coming this off season. I can't wait to show you guys. There's going to be a lot of things changing. I think Illinois is going to have a very good team going into next year, but the stuff going on outside of the team and outside of the roster, there's going to be some big changes coming, and I can't wait to show you guys. So once again, hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like, comment, of course. Love when you guys comment. And I will see you for the off-season video. We'll try to have that out before Christmas. It'll be a big one, and you guys should be excited for that. Cannot wait. Have a great day.